Okay, so this week I want to talk a little bit more about Portrait of a Graduate and Battelle for Kids, because it really is the way that social emotional learning is being brought into the Cumberland Valley School District, to a lot of different school districts in the area. Everybody's doing it the same, different names of different programs, but basically all the same, because it's coming down directives from the Department of Education, from teachers unions, from the Superintendent's Association. It's all these guidance of ways that we're going to help the children. But really, it's actually based coming from Marxist roots. And it is actually very scary when you look at where it's all coming from. The language that they use is actually taken verbatim sometimes out of Pablo Freire and Henry Thoreau, philosophers, writers that have written. They are Marxist based, and they have written, and their ideas and ideology have been adopted by our education system. And so we really need to look at, again, I'm not asking you to trust me, believe me. I'm asking you to do your own research. So the people that I listen to and I get information from, I go back and read the articles and read the books that they're referencing. So I have firsthand of the individuals. That's why for Battelle for Kids, I'm just asking you to go to their website and listen to their webinars and their podcasts. Listen to what they're saying. They're saying it very clearly what they're trying to do. So when people are saying, no, we're not really going to do that, we're bringing them in, but we're not really going to follow exactly what they're saying. If we listen to the people that are bringing the programs, this is what they want to accomplish. The same thing. Who are their strategic partners, and what's their ideology? What are their beliefs, and what are they trying to accomplish in our education system, in our schools? This is no small feat that they are accomplishing. This has been planned for decades. It's very well planned, and they have a lot of financial backing, and they have a lot of associations and organizations that are supporting them, so they can reference each other of why they're doing this and how great it is. But if we look at the research articles, so last school board meeting, or the board meeting before that, I actually talked about, I had three journals, articles, and one was a meta-analysis of 19 different studies that talked about social emotional learning and implementing it. And there is no evidence that it actually works, right? So what they do is they use a very small study. So a lot of it's based on a small study of 8 teachers in the north west corridor of our country, and they use teachers that were successful with students that didn't really have problems, and they said, see, if we implement this program, it works great. And so now we're going to implement it for all kids across the country, and basically they're going to make a lot of money on it. And it's not actually helpful to have it on such a broad scale for what they're doing. It's actually going to be harmful. First of all, it's taking away from the education, the academic education of our children, but it's also very harmful psychologically with all the surveys, with all the trauma they're causing, because the whole point of it is they say to be critical thinkers. And critical thinking is not what we think about. Critical thinking to me is reading a research paper that they're putting out that says there's no causation. There's some correlation if students have these competencies that they will do well academically, but there's no causation of the programs that they've implemented for decades. They've been trying to do it for decades. That shows their programs are working. But what they'll say is it's because they have to try harder and they didn't have enough support. They didn't have enough funding, they didn't have enough support, and now they do. So now we're going to push it more and more and more. But that's critical thinking. Critical thinking is look at what they've done. They have nothing to show that it's actually worked, but we're going to keep plugging along, putting more money into it, as opposed to putting into money into programs that we know academically have benefited people in the past of all levels, right? So we do want to make sure that we're hitting every student at their level, but this is not proven, and we keep going more and more into it. And it is over a $9 billion business in the United States. So please don't think that they are hurting for money. And just one of the things, Battelle for Kids is a nonprofit, and the CEO makes $425,000 a year. And her company is rooted and anchored in equity. And so I'm not saying I'm all for capitalism and what the market will bear, but if you're a nonprofit for equity and you make $425,000 a year for your salary, I think there has to be some justification for that. A lot of people took the loans during COVID. They did as well for $1 million. It didn't even cover their top 5 executives for their salaries. So I think we need to look at understanding it's a business. They're going to say they're doing this for the kids, they're doing it for equity. Well, if it's a nonprofit, I know that whenever we give, a lot of people, when they give to nonprofits and organizations, they want to know how their money is being spent. How are the people being paid? They should be adequately paid, but they're in a business that's supposed to be nonprofit and not making comparative salaries to a for-profit corporation. So again, what the market will bear, but I just don't know. Do people know that that's what their salaries are, that if that's what the CEO of Battelle for Kids is making? And to justify that, if she says everything they do is anchored in equity, I'm not really sure how you define that if you're saying that, and how does that look? Okay, so what I wanted to read is the Portrait of a Graduate is a national program created by an Ohio-based company called Battelle for Kids. Portrait of a Graduate is being used to fundamentally transform the purpose of U.S. education. And they will say this blatantly if you listen to their webinars and podcasts. So please go to them. I'm not saying anything they are not saying. It shifts curriculum, assessment, school accountability, and data collection away from academics and towards social emotional learning. So they want to shift it. They're saying, no, well, we still offer academics. We're still focused on that, but we also want to add this component. But the idea and concept is more and more social emotional learning, which takes away time from the hard skills academics. Okay, Battelle for Kids was created by Battelle. So Battelle, the corporation, is an applied science and technology company that uses technology to track behaviors. Well, doesn't this work out well when we're doing surveys, right? So what are we trying to do? So they already have the technology and understand what it takes to get the information that they want, so they can gear their programming to get the results that they want. And what do they want? They want empathetic, engaged citizens in a democratic society, which again, take it from the Marxist book from 2011 from Henry Thoreau, which says that we need to be engaged citizens in our society and good global citizens. So yes, we need to be good people in our community, but understanding what their words mean is crucial. And what a citizen means is a good critical thinker, and what that means is not going with the norm, because right now what they believe is our system is oppressive and it's racist and it's not equitable. And so the only way to change that is to uproot the system. So we have to dismantle the system, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to create activists in the school. We're going to use the youth. We're going to make them become critical thinkers and have them kind of present them with some trauma with these concepts, because they're just learning and they're being confronted with a lot of topics of social reform. One of the things that they say on one of the webinars for Battelle for Kids is that we need to ask, what are the kids doing to make society better? What are they doing to make the world a better place? Seriously, they're kids. They should be learning the skills they need to be adults. What are the adults doing to make the world a better place? Why are we putting that on the kids? But that's what they're going to do. They're saying, you need to change the world. What are you going to do? They don't even have the hard skills and the thought process and the big scope of actually how the world works, how economics work, how the civics works locally, statewide, and nationally. Do they? Do they understand? And really, what does empathy mean to these people? Empathy is a moral value that's different for everybody. And I think it's one of those things that I don't want somebody else telling my son or daughter what empathy means. And if they're on their scale of being an empathetic person or being a good global citizen by being environmentally, socially responsible. And there's a key word, okay? So ESG, environmentally social governance. And that's a platform. And that's what they will use. How are you working with climate control? Are you being a critical thinker? Are you being empathetic? Are you being a good steward? Are you being a good citizen and a good global citizen? And so all that stuff comes into play, and we probably all have different views on it, but we need to understand what they're teaching, and then we can decide what we agree with and what we don't agree with. But I don't think people actually understand what they're bringing in. And so that's why I'm here, right? I'm trying to help you do your own research, but give you some tools and some information to actually start with, and then you can research it yourself. So just want to kind of go on where for Battelle for Kids and Battelle, right? So they are great. This company has been around, and it uses technology to track behaviors. So the program was incentivized through policies and grants from the 2015 federal education law that Every Student Succeeds Acts, which replaced No Child Left Behind. So it's one thing to another, right? From Common Core to No Child Left Behind to Every Student Succeeds, and how they're trying to push some of these concepts. And so each of the companies is working towards mass data collection of our children's values, attitudes, and behaviors with a company called Data Quality Campaign. And so I think one of the videos and definitely the blogs will go over some of the surveys that they do and what they're trying to find out and what they say they're trying to find out and what are they actually getting, the questions that they're asking, and are parents aware of what they're asking. Because again, really what a lot of parents that I know, really, we want to push for having not only opt in, well, you opt in, but you send these surveys home. There's no reason to waste academic time doing a survey, right? It can be helpful, maybe, I don't know, but give the parents the ability to see the survey. They can do it with their child, and then they can send it back to school. They have 2 days to do it. So if we're saying our students are responsible enough, right? So one of the things when I'm doing the book review is that our students are responsible enough to say, if this book is not for me, then I'm going to just put it back on the shelf and I'm not going to read it, even though there's vulgarity and obscenity, because they're responsible. Well, then they should be responsible to take the survey home, do it with their parents, and then bring it back in, right? So that's what we want to get to with these surveys, so that everybody's aware of what's being asked of our children. Some of the questions are very personal about family members, community members, and our children specifically, and what they're being exposed to or not exposed to. And I think parents would be interested in learning that. So they're collecting this data, and some of the strategic partners of Battelle with the direct adoption of Portrait of a Graduate are CASEL, right? So we understand that that's their collaborative SEL program, right? They have the pillars, they provide a lot of information to actually bring the SEL in. The Aurora Institute and Knowledge Works. And so I think it's important to understand tracking children into all sorts of social services, including health services, and into the workforce. And the final thing is Portrait of a Graduate is the backbone for social crediting scoring, as well as that ESG scores for children. So again, that environmentally social governance platform that we talked about. And so it's going to help them come into line with what is going to be acceptable or not acceptable by these individuals. So I think one of the things to realize is that there is I just want to go through these papers, because Knowledge Work put out this article about tracking. And so what is tracking and what they want to get away to? They want to get away from tracking, which actually is grades, and they want to get into personalized competency-based learning, right? So again, the end goal. So we're going to slow walk it in, and then we're going to try to more and more get these competencies as how we're rating, assessing our children. So tracking is the bad part. And so what it says is it uses biased standardized tests and teacher recommendations to groups and segregates students by perceived ability and behavioral compliance, and then implement one size fits all. Whereas what they want to do is each student receives customized support to remain engaged and challenged while mastering standards and aligned competencies. So again, it sounds like, yes, those big back tests are bad because then the teacher actually assesses the student and says, you belong in this group because this is what you know, and this is what you belong in this group because you're not that advanced. Is that bad? I know my kids are actually at different levels, completely different levels from each other and also from their friends. And I'm very thankful that they're not grouped together. Thankful for the individuals that are smarter than my children aren't grouped with my children, and thankful that they're challenged and not put with individuals that are behind them in the same grade. So there's nothing wrong with actually appropriately assessing with tests to understand where our children are. And instead of moving away from tests, that now we're going to competencies, which actually is not the hard skills that they're going to need. Okay, so again, here we go. Bad, the bell curve. Why? Like, the bell curve is actually just shows we have some students that get it, some students that do great, and some students that don't, right? So there's that whole bell curve of, we had the kids that got, 60s, we had kids that got, the majority of kids got 80s, and then some kids got 90s, right? That's just normal. That's just normal. We are all different, and we all have different abilities in different things. And the bell curve wouldn't be the same for math as it is English, right? So it's all individualized with what our strengths are academically. So they say that that's racist, it's classism, it's fixed notions of intelligence, segregated, and white supremacy. What we want to move into is self-efficacy, self-regulation, culturally sustaining pedagogy. That is very scary. We'll talk about that another time, but it's culturally relevant learning, which they think is great because we're putting in word problems about social problems. But what we do is then talk about social problems and don't learn the hard skills of the class. So this is all good. Anti-oppressive pedagogy, critical race theory. So they actually put it right in there, although we say we're not doing that. And then social learning theory. Okay, assessment is for ranking and sorting to provide students with merit, advanced, or gifted labels, as opposed to low struggling college prep honors. So it's basically classifying kids. Again, like I said earlier, like, there's nothing wrong with having different levels of individuals. We are that. Like, to take that away, I don't care what color, what race you are. It doesn't matter. It's just people at different levels. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with oppression. Now, it may have something to do with opportunity, right? And so we want to provide that opportunity. But to assess kids from where they are and then give them the need that where they are, there's nothing racist about that. Not giving people opportunity is not what we want to do, right? So we want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. But trying to put people where they belong and assessing that is not racist. What they want to do, they're saying assessment is for learning, and we need to keep them growing in their competencies and not to waste time putting them labels. But we can label everything else. We're okay to label white, black, oppressed, non-oppressed, but we can't label ability. And there's nothing wrong with that in school because we want to hit kids where they are and then progress them. Okay, pacing. So this is what they're saying with tracking. Keep up with the teacher or school's arbitrary milestones or fall behind and receive lower grades, lose course credit, or get diverted to lower tracks. So again, like, grades matter. You have to work to get the grade. And if you're in the appropriate class, you'll be able to handle that workload and get a decent grade and get the help that you need to do that. So there's nothing wrong with keeping up with a standard. When these kids get out of school, they're going to have to produce, right? You have to produce. I don't care what business that you are in, whether you're in the service business, if you're in manufacturing, wherever you're in sales, you have to produce. And that's how you're graded. And that's okay. That's how our system works. And it's a good system, right? It keeps us accountable, keeps us responsible, it keeps us motivated, engaged. What they want to do is learners advance with learning continuum after demonstrating competency in a way that are meaningful, relevant, and purposeful to each learner. So again, we don't really need those standards, those grades. We're just going to say, you know what, they critically think, whether it's right or wrong. They work through a process. They were critically thinking. They were empathetic. So that's good. That's not what we want. And they're going to say, no, we still want them to know academics. Right. But look at, these are the people that are strategic partners with the companies that we're bringing in. And this is what they're saying. So please understand, this is their goal. Okay. What grades show? Tracking. Grades are threats. So there it is. They spell it right out. Grades are threats. They're designed to scare students into completing work. Yes, I hope they do. I hope they scare my kids into getting work done because I expect them to get an acceptable grade. Now, in each subject, it may be a little bit different because of their ability, but I still expect them to work hard and to work towards a good grade because that gives them goals, that gives them confidence, that gives them the skills to actually stay with something and learn and use their brain. They mostly measure student behavior, student socioeconomic circumstances of their position within race, gender, disability, or linguistic hierarchies. Okay, so all bad. What we want to do, grades may be non-existent. They say it right here. But if present, they should reflect the level of mastery a student has achieved in a given domain of inquiry. So not necessarily like of a subject, maybe just of a project that they did. And if they mastered the skills, but again, what they're saying is mastering skills of a competency, and that's what their grade is going to be, not actually of the hard skills. So again, please do your own research. It's very sad to me that we try to present this information to the board and we seem to be getting nowhere. We want to educate the community. We want the community to do their own research, see what's happening, see what they're putting in, and what the companies that are coming in, the programs that they're allowing, the board and the administration is allowing to come in, what their goals are. And stop just going on the board and the administration say, well, we're not going to allow that. We're bringing them in, but we're not going to allow them to do what we're paying them to do. I mean, talk about not being able to critically think. I just don't understand where that comes from. But again, do your own research. Don't believe me. I'll just leave you with this. And it says, because personalized competency-based learning can be used to dismantle and replace the racist origins of and current harms produced by tracking, it functions as a scalable, student-centered, anti-racist remedy. So the only way to be non-oppressive, to be anti-racist, is to dismantle the system that we have, including grades, and work towards these competencies. Really? What's that going to look like for our kids down the road? Is it going to give them the opportunities that they want? So we want to make sure that we're doing our own research and then ask questions. Even if you get stonewalled a little bit, keep asking questions. All right, have a good week.